Morning. There's the lights. So it's political season, and of course we're drowning in political ads, which is just marvelous. You know, I complained during the primaries about Carrick Flynn and him trying to buy himself an election by just an absolute deluge of expensive advertising, which didn't work out for him. And I can only hope that similar extreme levels of spending do not result in any kind of benefits for the people this go around. Oregon gubernatorial candidate Tina Kotek, for example, who just every time I open my phone, good God. I mean, as a proportion, I'd say a minimum of 50 to 1 for like literally anybody else. And I mean, I've seen a couple other ads. I saw one ad for my local House district, which was an attack ad against the Republicans. So, I mean, you know, our current House rep, I think has been a traditionally safe Democrat seat, but due to redistricting, it's actually competitive this go around. So they're actually spending money on, you know, what would ordinarily be a pretty safe district, which I guess is surprising. One that really pissed me off, though, and again, I was surprised to see an ad for Ron Wyden, who, you know, I don't know if he's even, is he up for election this go around? I don't know. And I think he's pretty much safe. I don't think there's any question about whether he's going to remain in the Senate. And he's been there for, God, forever. It's just awful, as so many senators are. But in his ad, he said something to the effect of, you know, I mean, he knows inflation's, you know, and the economy is kind of a big deal. And of course, he wants to put inflation back on business, right? And he's like, well, you know, the price of crude is only here, but, you know, the price at the pumps have increased 4 times as much. And so we need to hold these businesses accountable for inflation. I'm like, hold on a second. And this is not the first time I've seen this. The party in power wanting to draw the causality arrow from profits, therefore inflation, right? Like increased prices, therefore inflation. Try to paint this as some sort of consequence of greed, right? Which isn't to say that, you know, profits aren't a consideration in any market. But, I mean, if you look at, for example, the stock market, you know, I mean, stock prices have been plummeting for, you know, basically the entire year because projected earnings are going down, right? And if business was cashing in somehow on inflation, then the projected earnings would not be an issue, right? It's people are earning less money all around, right? And inflation, the causal arrow here is being inverted because the party in power wants to deflect its own responsibility, right? And it's not that increased profits from businesses are leading to higher prices. Higher prices are a consequence of increased money supply, leading to the requirement to increase prices to maintain margins, right? You're not going to be able to continue to stay in business if your costs are going up and you're not increasing prices to meet it, right? And like the crude versus gasoline at the pump argument, and Ron Wyden knows that is not a one-to-one correlation between, you know, crude and refined gasoline, right? There's things that happen in the refining process, like, and even adults like me can understand that, gee, what you pump out of the ground doesn't go directly into your tank, and it's a value-added product. and there's energy required to extract and transport and refine said crude into a usable product, which is then transported and distributed. And there are costs associated all along the way, right? You have to pay people to run the refineries and maintain the pipelines and drive the delivery trucks, and in Oregon, pump the gas physically into your car, right? And that is not a consequence of greedy businesses. That is a consequence of the practical logistical demands of extracting and delivering this stuff. And of course, remember, the price was, somewhere sub 2 only a few years ago, right? And so did, gas industry executives only now suddenly become greedy? No, of course not. But again, when you have to pay the guy pumping the gas $15 an hour to literally get the gas from the pump into your car, which you yourself are entirely capable of doing, you're adding cost to the product, right? Never mind, the fact that diesel is required to transport, whether by rail or by truck, the fuel from the refinery to the gas station, right? And I think last I heard, truckers to fill up a truck now is somewhere in the $1,000 range, because diesel is through the roof, right? And transport costs are absolutely atrocious. And of course, the price of diesel is not kept, parity with the price of gasoline, right? And so you are obviously being lied to by someone who knows he's lying to you. Ron Wyden understands these things probably even much better than I do. And if he were of a mind to do so, he could easily explain these things to you. But of course, that serves no purpose for him, even though, again, I don't think he's in any danger of losing his Senate seat. But of course, the Democrats seem poised at this point to get absolutely demolished in the midterms, and rightly so. Because this is a surprise to absolutely no one, but politicians don't seem very adept at holding themselves accountable. And I enjoyed the fact that Liz Truss, the brief and now former Prime Minister of the UK, absolutely apparently stepped in it and was out within, was it weeks? And prior to that, Boris Johnson, could have remained in power, but, basically just decided to step down. I think that's healthy, right? And really, there's no obvious mechanism in place for somebody like Biden to do something similar. It would be highly unusual in our system, and there's no really good reason for that. And I understand that, having the head of state of, a global superpower, suddenly and unexpectedly out of office is maybe not good for stability. And stability actually is really critically important to maintaining a fragile global supply chain that keeps billions of people clothed, fed, and housed, right? So I get that sudden upheaval is, not something somebody should contemplate lightly. Nonetheless, even if somebody's forced out because, they had, a fairly serious scandal, and it didn't sound like Liz Truss really did have a terribly serious scandal. She implemented some policies. It had some unintended consequences, as policies typically do, and which is why the default quote-unquote conservative position is usually the correct one, not because things don't need to change, but because changes are often so poorly considered and unintended consequences so poorly considered that gradual incremental, carefully considered change, and default gridlock is generally just going to be better, not because the system as it is better, but because people have found ways to work within that system that work for them in general. And if you just leave people alone, even in, you know, quote-unquote communist China, right? People find a way to work within the bounds of those rules in a way that basically allows for life to continue, with people being generally free to go about their business and live their lives as unmolested by the state or anybody else as possible. Which isn't to say it's perfect. I mean, it is far from perfect. Certainly, China is far from perfect, although, I mean, they maybe do some things better than us in some ways, and we could learn some lessons. And you could say that of any country. I'm not like a huge, you know, Chinese communist fanboy by any means, despite the fact that I'm wearing red today. But yes, like, there are things we could do better. And despite the instability it might introduce, I wish our politicians had a precedent and a culture of accountability. Like, say, you know what, I was running the show, things are going poorly, ultimately the buck stops with me. Like, we have that saying, and it's totally just, we pay lip service to. I know Biden said that literally multiple times, only to then turn around and blame Putin or the Republicans or COVID or whatever other effing thing, other than his own just, you know, ham-handed handling of the world's largest military and economy for every failure, which has been, you know, just spectacular from day one. No, like, Biden needs to step down. That would be the most just appropriate and greatest display of integrity that he's ever had, were he to do so. And I'm not sure he even has the mental capacity and wherewithal to do so, which is sad. And you know, somebody should be, what is it, the 25th Amendment or whatever, that needs to be invoked to force him out, because, I mean, he's clearly mentally compromised in a global political environment right now where we are, you know, sleepwalking into World War III and, you know, possible nuclear exchange. Yeah, we're kind of running the gamut here now. And I started off talking about inflation and just boring ads. But yeah, anyway, that's my thoughts on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Are you getting bombarded with ads? What do you think of them? You know, do you assume that they're lying to you at this point? I think that's a safe assumption, and it really, I wonder if people just looked at those ads and assumed people were lying to them, and I don't care about the party, and went about operating as though whatever they were being told was false. The world might run a little more smoothly. I don't know. What do you think? Drop a comment below. Like the video if you enjoyed. Feel free to share it with anybody you think might be interested. Feel free to have a conversation below. I will happily engage with any comments I receive. Inspiring and uplifting as always. It's been fun. We'll see you on the next one.